Good morning, 8th grade. Welcome to week 9, day 1. Today is May 18th. I'm going to take you through what you are responsible for today. So I'll click on your classwork tab. You'll notice that there's an agenda for this week. So if you wanted to take a look at that and just kind of figure out what you're going to be expected to do for the entire week, that's there. I will just let you know that you are scheduled to have an assessment on Wednesday. So I would say just to begin preparing for that. It's going to be on all of systems, and you will have a review tomorrow, Tuesday, that was created based off of the assessment. So I think that as long as you complete the review and take good notes, you should be fine for the test on Wednesday. Okay, so today is a pretty easy lesson. This is something that we've already covered before when we were dealing with equations, but they do come back when we deal with systems since equations are a part of systems. So we're going to be looking at how to solve systems with inspection. There's a screenshot here that's a chart from the lesson. I just put it there as a support. And then here's your lesson for today. So for the warm-up, I wanted to have you guys think back and see if you remember what we noticed about the slope and y-intercept when we have one solution, no solution, and infinitely many. There was something that we kind of figured out while we were solving our equations and dealing with linear functions that relate to these three options. So that was when we have one solution, our slopes will always be different, and the y-intercepts don't really matter. If you see different slopes, then you can expect that those lines will intersect at one common point. If you have no solution, then our slopes would be the same and our y-intercepts would be different. That's because those lines are parallel, so they would be traveling at the same rate, but they would be starting at a different point, which would make them never intersect, which would result in no solutions. And then infinitely many would have the same slope and the same y-intercept because they're the exact same line. So they share every single point on their line. All right, so the first part of the lesson, we are just using inspection to determine how many solutions and explain why. So we're given the blue equation, y equals 2x plus 1, and the red equation, y equals 2x minus 7. How many solutions are there? So I would say there are no solutions, and the reason is because the slopes, which are the number next to x, are the same, and the intercepts are different. So these would be parallel lines on a graph, and they would never intersect. Okay, and there's your answer right there. So there's a couple more. That's just a reminder of what you would do to figure this out. So here's another one, right? Notice that our top equation could be further simplified, so you want to make sure that if there's any kind of distribution that needs to happen, or sometimes they would put a coefficient with y where you would have to divide. Just make sure that both equations are in simplest form first. So after we distribute, to simplify, we would notice that again, our slopes are the same, -4, but our intercepts are different. They also like to do this a lot. I don't know if you can see very well, but they'll give you one where it's the negative of the number and then one where it's the positive. They're trying to like trick you there, but these are two different values. So they would still be different, and they would they would result in no solutions, parallel lines. Okay? Here's another. Both equations are simplified. So we look at our slopes. There's no coefficient in front of x, but I know that there's always a 1 there if there's no number. So that gives us our answer right there. Our slopes are different, so that means we have one solution. These lines would intersect at one point. Okay? And then I think there's a few more for you to try. Again, a distribution, causing the equations to be identical. So when they're the same slope, same y-intercept, there's infinitely many solutions. Okay, so this part should be pretty simple. We've already seen this. This is where sometimes it gets just a little more complicated, but not really. So there's two ways you can go about answering this question. You can look at this as two separate linear functions, right? And just do the same thing we just did using inspection. Look at the slope. So I noticed that this left side has a 4 and the right side has 2 for the slope. So I would know right away that these are going to intersect, which means there's one solution. Or you could go about solving it, right? You can start solving the equation, and this is where those options come in. So if you're solving and then you get like x equals a number or y equals a number, then that means that there is going to be one solution because you're identifying either the x part of the solution or the y part of the solution. So this means that there would be one solution because I'm getting an x equal to a number. Okay, I could then plug it in to figure out what y is, and that would be the one point that the lines are intersecting at. So what else could happen? Well, you could be given an equation and then get a false statement. You guys should all know by now that if that's the case, for example, if I had 3x plus 1 equals 3x plus 8, right? If we started solving this, both my x's would eliminate, they would cancel out, and I'd be left with 1 equals 8. This is a false statement. So since it's false, since it's not true, that means that these lines will never intersect, so there would be no solution. Okay? Did you have to take that extra step to subtract the 3x? No, because you should have been able to look at the two expressions, right? And seen that the slopes were the same. They both were 3, and the intercepts were different. So that is your inspection part of it, right? Let me just make sure I take you through the rest of the lesson in case anything comes up that I think might be a little tricky for you. So there's the two options, right? Solving the equation or just using inspection, both supporting that there is one solution. Here's another where we can't use inspection right away because there's a distribution that has to happen and then also a combination. So you do have to do a little work sometimes for the equations like this. So you'll see here, right, I started solving, I distributed, I combined like terms, I inversed, and I got -5 equals -5. That's a true statement, so that means there's going to be infinitely many solutions. If I just started simplifying the right side to then compare the slopes, notice I distributed the 2, right? And then I combine -2 and -3. Now I have two simplified expressions where there's a slope and an intercept. I can just use inspection and know that since they are identical, since they are the same, there are infinitely many solutions. Okay, and that's the inspection process. If you were taking a test or taking a Regents or something like that, and this is what you got in your work, this highlighted section here, 4x minus 5 equals 4x minus 5, you can absolutely stop and write that there's infinitely many solutions, and you can say, because I used inspection, the slopes are the same and so are the intercepts, and that's perfectly acceptable. You don't need to do all the rest of the work. I know some people like to solve the equation, so that's why I'm showing you both ways. Okay, there's a few more. Again, this should just be an inspection one for you. You guys should know how many solutions there are just looking at this. And then you have a Google form where there's going to be 10 questions. I'll show you where that is. And you're going to do the same thing that we just did in the lesson. So you'll tell me, I think for the first 4 or 5, how many solutions are there? 1, none, or infinitely many. And then how do you know? Okay, so you'll say, if it was 1, because the slopes are different. If it was none, slopes are the same, y-intercepts are different. Infinitely many, slopes are the same, and the y-intercepts are also the same. Okay? And then there's a few on the bottom where you're given the equations. Some you're going to have to do a little bit more work for, where you'll have to distribute and then combine, and then you can use inspection to answer the same questions. How many solutions? 1, none, or infinite. And that's pretty much it. Okay? So I hope this helped. I hope you guys staying safe, and I will talk to you tomorrow.